Ferrari just put both Hamilton and Leclerc in the same car, and what they felt was so different, it's raising one dangerous question across the entire grid. Is this the fastest upgrade in Formula One, or the hardest car to drive? Because this was not a small change. We're talking about a game that could reach multiple tenths per lap, a completely reworked aerodynamic package, and a system that already failed once, now back again. Same track, same setup, same conditions, but one driver stepped out with confidence, the other with doubts. And that should never happen in a top team. Because when two elite drivers field two completely different cars, it means something deeper is happening. Something that could either unlock Ferrari's season, or expose a weakness that only appears when it matters most. And inside this upgrade, there is one hidden factor, the one that explains everything they felt, and why this could become most unpredictable car on the grid. At first, it made no sense. Same car, same setup, same track, and yet two completely different experiences. Leclerc got out of the car, focused on what improved. The front end felt alive. The rotation through high-speed corners sharper, more precise. The balance closer to what Ferrari had been chasing since the start of the season. For him, this was progress. Clear, measurable progress. Because the new floor was doing exactly what it was designed to do. More downforce, cleaner airflow underneath the car. More stability when the speed increases. And that kind of stability changes everything for a driver. You trust the car earlier. You commit faster. You carry more speed without hesitation. That is what Leclerc felt. But then Hamilton got in. Same car, completely different focus. Because he was not just looking at what improved. He was feeling how the car reacts at the limit. And that is where everything shifted. The car was sharper, more responsive, but also more sensitive. Small steering inputs created bigger reactions. Throttle application had to be more precise. Any imbalance was felt immediately. And that is not always a good thing. Because in Formula One, sensitivity can mean speed, but it can also mean instability. And Hamilton felt both. Moments where the car felt incredibly fast, and moments where it felt just on the edge. Not losing control, but not fully settled either. And that difference is where the real story begins. Because this is not just about one upgrade. This is about how all the changes interact. The new floor increases downforce, but also makes the car more reactive. The front wing amplifies that response, making the front end more aggressive. And the rear wing system depends on that balance to stay stable. Everything is connected, which means when one part improves, another part becomes more sensitive. And that is exactly what both drivers experienced. Leclerc focused on the gain. Hamilton felt the cost. And both are seeing the same thing from different angles. A car with more potential than before, but also a car that demands more precision than ever. Now here is where this becomes critical, because this kind of behavior does not always show its limits in testing. In clean air, everything works. In controlled laps, the car behaves. But in a race, everything changes. Dirty air, tire degradation, changing grip levels. That is where sensitivity becomes a problem. And that is exactly what Ferrari still does not fully know. Because what they saw at Monza was only part of the picture. The controlled version. The version where everything is close to perfect. But the real version, the one that decides results, has not been seen yet. And this is where the situation becomes even more serious. Because what both drivers felt is not just about handling. It is about the limit. Not the visible limit. The hidden one. The one that only appears when everything is pushed to the maximum. Because the SF-26, with this new package, is no longer a car that builds performance gradually. It is a car that reaches a peak very quickly, and then stays right on the edge. That is what Hamilton was sensing. Not a lack of speed, but a lack of margin. A car that gives you everything, but asks for perfection in return. And in Formula One, that trade is dangerous, because perfection does not exist in a race. Now think about what happens when the tires start to degrade. Grip drops. Balance shifts. The car moves differently corner after corner. In a stable car, you adjust. In a sensitive car, you react. And that reaction costs time. Small corrections. Tiny hesitations. Moments where the driver cannot fully commit. That is where performance disappears. Not in one big mistake, but in 1,000 small ones. And this is exactly where the difference between Leclerc and Hamilton becomes critical. Leclerc adapts quickly. He trusts the front end. He builds confidence through rotation. He leans into that aggressive balance. Hamilton reads the car differently. He looks for stability. He looks for consistency. He looks for something he can rely on lap after lap. And right now, the car is giving them both something different: potential and pressure. Now here is where everything connects to the most important part of this story. Because Ferrari did not just add performance, they shifted the balance of the entire car. The revised floor is producing more downforce, but also making the airflow more sensitive. The front wing is amplifying that behavior, making the front end sharper than before. And the rear has to manage all of it perfectly, especially with that rotating system in play. Because when that rear wing activates, it changes how the air leaves the car. And when it returns, everything has to reconnect instantly. If that connection is clean, the car feels incredible. If it is not, the balance shifts right at the worst moment. Corner entry. And that is not something you always feel immediately. Sometimes it is just a slight hesitation, a small correction, a tiny loss of confidence. But in Formula One, that is everything. So now Ferrari is in a position they cannot ignore. They have built a faster car, but also a more complex one. A car that rewards precision and punishes anything less. And that leads to a question that will define everything going forward. Not how fast the car is, but how often it can be that fast. Because if the performance is always there, Ferrari is back. But if it only appears under perfect conditions, then what looked like a breakthrough becomes something much more difficult. A car that can win, but only if everything goes right. And in Formula One, everything rarely does. And this is where everything finally converges. Because there is one moment where all these variables collide. Not in testing, not in perfect conditions. In a race, when the car is heavy with fuel, when the tires are no longer fresh, when the driver is no longer exploring, but defending, that is where the real identity of this Ferrari appears. Because up to now, everything we have seen is controlled, carefully managed laps, predictable conditions, clean airflow. But in a race, nothing is clean. Dirty air changes the balance. Braking points shift under pressure. The car behaves differently lap after lap. And that is where sensitivity becomes the defining factor. Because a car like this does not hide its limits. It exposes them. If the balance is slightly off, if the rear does not reconnect perfectly, if the driver hesitates for just a fraction, the performance drops immediately. And that is what makes this package so extreme. Not just because of what it can do, but because of how precise everything has to be to unlock it. Now imagine the scenario. Final laps of a race. Tires already fading. A rival right behind. You are not thinking about perfect inputs. You are reacting, defending, adjusting, managing pressure. And in that moment, a car that demands perfection becomes a risk. Because it gives you no margin, no safety window, no room for error. And that is exactly the line Ferrari is walking right now. On one side, a car that, in the right conditions, can be incredibly fast. On the other, a car that becomes difficult the moment those conditions change. And this is why what happened at Monza matters so much, because it revealed both sides, the speed and the sensitivity, the potential and the pressure. And now everything leads to the same conclusion. Ferrari has not just built an upgrade, they have built a challenge, a car that can deliver, but only if everything aligns. And that is what will define their season. Not whether they are fast, but whether they can stay fast when it matters most. Because in Formula One, the difference between winning and falling behind is not the peak performance, is the ability to repeat it, lap after lap, corner after corner, under pressure. And that is something this Ferrari has not fully proven yet. But when the lights go out, there will be no more questions, only answers. And this is where everything becomes brutally simple. Because in the end, Formula One always reduces everything to one question. Can you deliver when it matters most? Not in testing, not in clean laps, not when everything is under control, but when the pressure is real. And this Ferrari is heading straight into that moment. Because what Monza revealed was not just performance, it was a pattern. A car that reaches incredible speed very quickly. A car that feels alive, responsive, sharp, but also a car that lives right at the edge. No buffer, no comfort zone, no margin for error. And that is where seasons are decided. Because over one lap, this could be devastating. In qualifying, in clean air, in perfect conditions, Ferrari could unlock something special. Pole positions, track position, control. But races are not perfect. And that is where the real risk appears. Because this car does not forgive. It does not hide mistakes. It does not smooth out instability. It amplifies it. Every correction becomes visible. Every imbalance becomes time loss. Every hesitation becomes vulnerability. And that is exactly what Hamilton felt. Not fear, not doubt. Awareness. Awareness that this car, at its limit, is incredibly fast, but also incredibly demanding. And that is where everything connects to the final truth. Because Leclerc can extract it. He thrives on that front-end aggression. He builds confidence from rotation. He commits early and lives with the edge. Hamilton approaches it differently. He builds rhythm. He relies on consistency. He needs the car to respond the same way every time. And right now, this Ferrari sits exactly between those two worlds, capable of greatness, but not yet completely predictable. And that is why Miami will not just be a race. It will be a reveal. Because there, everything is exposed. Long straights, slow corners, heavy traction zones, changing grip, every weakness amplified, every strength tested. If Ferrari gets it right, if the balance holds, if the rear stays stable, if both drivers can trust the car, then this is the moment everything changes. They do not just compete, they arrive. But if they do not, if the sensitivity appears, if the car becomes inconsistent, if one driver adapts and the other struggles, then the truth becomes impossible to ignore. This is not just a fast car. It is a difficult one. And in Formula One, the fastest car does not always win. The most usable one does. So what Ferrari created at Monza is not just an upgrade. It is a test of engineering, a test of drivers, a test of execution under pressure. And when the lights go out, there will be no interpretation, no theory, no second chances, only one answer. Did Ferrari build a machine that can dominate, or a machine that demands more than even they can control?